There is a lot of concern among critics of the government that perhaps the reason why they drag their feet in the fight against Galamsey is because of the economic advantage that we get from it. Not just in terms of all the gold that we're getting to export, but even the fact that it is a source of livelihood, even though an illegal one, for so many Ghanaians. The president points to some 1 million people who, are involved in Galamsey. But you have a radical thought on this, don't you?
I do, 100%. In fact, it's a very narrow and limited perspective on development without fully balancing the cost benefit or doing the cost benefit analysis and looking at development from a holistic point of view on a sustainable basis. In fact, it typifies the African mindset typically, where we are more short-term in nature. So here and now, which does not allow us to lift ourselves and think generational and transformational. That is why we are here. In fact, if you take time to analyze the slave trade centuries back, and you look at the perspective of Africans, Ghanaians, who participated in the slave trade, they were looking more short-term in what they could get. So it didn't matter if somebody had a cup of schnapps, it was okay to ship a whole family out of the country. We have not been transformed. So for me, we need to analyze the entire value chain and understand that this is not the way to go. In fact, if you look at countries that were our peers from independence, talk about Malaysia, Singapore, in fact, talk about South Korea. When 1961, 1952, our GDP per capita was higher than the newly industrialized nation, South Korea. And in fact, if you look at Ghana GDP per capita and you compare that to that of US at independence, and now you can see that we have deteriorated. If you look at these countries that have made progression, right? They didn't do so on the basis of extensive reliance on natural resource exploitation. No. That is not to discount the fact that the deposit that God has given us, we should look down on it. But we are not making optimal use of the natural resources that God has given us. And for that reason, we are not benefiting optimally. So I take a different view to the fact that we should continue on this path simply because some 4 million people are engaged in that sector. We are getting foreign exchange. It's cheap. For me, this is not the kind of leadership we voted for. I'll give you a couple of reasons. And I also ask Ghanaians to forgive me. Look at it this way. If you look at mining, and you look at the various sectors of the economy, and their contribution to revenue generation, mining and quarrying is not delivering its full potential to our revenue envelope. If you put all the sectors of the economy together and look at sectorial analysis and their contribution to revenue generation, you come to oil and gas lately, right? That is contributing around 22.3% or so to the total revenue, oil and gas. Then you come to mining and quarrying, okay, which is delivering close to 12%. That is very low. We are a major exporter of gold. If you compare the contribution of mining and quarrying and the entire value chain to our revenue generation, and you benchmark that against other countries that are doing proper mining and adding value and creating jobs along that value chain, you realize that our gold exports, relative to the size of our economy, our export earnings, and the revenue we are generating from that, we are far behind. Far behind. That should tell you that this is not the way to go. That is not the only thing. If then again, if you look at even manufacturing, because we are not adding value, manufacturing and its contribution to revenue generation is just around 9%. In fact, it's far below the manufacturing component and its contribution to revenue when it comes to Singapore, when it comes to Malaysia and other, and those who will say our aspirational peers. Even Cudjoe, if we compare the subsectors and their revenue generation to our economy, and we compare that to even some of our regional peers or our structural peers, Ghana is far behind. For instance, if you pick agriculture, its contribution to GDP in Ivory Coast is just around 17%. Agriculture is delivering close to 10% of their tax revenue or their revenue. If it comes to Ghana, agriculture is delivering less than 1%. Okay, it's about the mindset and the approach to agriculture, because we've left it entirely to peasant farmers and the rest of them. We are not applying business sense to agriculture. That feeding people is business, it's wealth creation. So we are losing from that perspective. The other bit to look at is employment generation. If you compare other countries that are doing proper mining and you compare employment generation to that of Ghana, you can see that in terms of decent job creation, employment generation, the employment response to growth in the mining and quarrying sector is very weak. So the mining sector, if you add quarrying to that, is not delivering quality jobs on sustainable basis. In fact, in the last 23 years, you will see that in terms of decent job creation, mining and quarrying hasn't really added much to employment data in Ghana. Now, the World Bank recently informed us that between 2012 and 2023, our economy on net basis has only added 250,000 jobs. Meanwhile, within that same period, the number of Ghanaians who have entered the labor market, we are looking at close to 2.7 million people who have entered the labor market within that same period. All right. So annually, we are injecting into the labor market around 500,000, adding to the labor force, when the economy on net basis is creating far less. In fact, it's the reason why, even though Bank of Ghana doesn't advertise for employment, but they are recruiting, and there's pressure. Everybody probably wants to be on the payroll at Bank of Ghana. So you can see that public sector institutions, economic institutions, public sector institutions in Ghana that have got a balance sheet to be able to pay premium wages, there's pressure. Even when there's very little need for job, for employment, there's pressure on them. And people are migrating from the private sector to the public sector and all of that. They are responding to the frictions in the economy because the employment response to growth is very weak, regardless of how you measure it. So we are not maximizing the value chain along this mining to be able to create decent jobs. Now, even though government says that about 4 million Ghanaians are engaged in this illegal mining and all of that, they are not paying taxes. It is not showing in GRA database. It is not showing in terms of their database. So it means that they are not paying taxes to the state. One basic function of the state, in fact, from the conceptualization of the state as a tax state more than 100 years ago, okay, when the state was conceptualized as a tax state, one basic function of the state is to collect taxes. The ability of the state to deliver on its development objectives for the citizens depends very much on how effective the state is able to collect taxes. Of course, the rate, the structure, and all of that are very important. So because a significant portion of our economy, mining and quarrying, because we have not transformed that sector and adding value and creating decent job employment in that area, we are losing out in terms of income taxes. We are also losing out in terms of the multiplier effect, okay, along that value chain. The other bit to take note of is that even though here it is fair to commend government that there is a crowding in of export earnings from gold with the establishment of gold board and all of that. I acknowledge that. And I think I commend government from that perspective. So, but that will not be used as a basis for not dealing with illegal mining. That will be weak leadership. That will be leadership that put premium on its interest, short-term interest, at the expense of medium and long-term economic transformation. That will be weak leadership. So I acknowledge that government has done well with the crowding in of export earnings from gold compared to what was prevailing towards the end of 2024. In fact, when you go to the political manifestos of the two main political parties, you will notice that the NPP, as part of dealing with smuggling within the mining sector, had proposed in their manifesto that they were going to reduce the final withholding tax of 3% from export of gold from the artisanal small-scale miners from 3% to 1% as a way of dealing with smuggling, while the NDC was a bit more transformative or bold in proposing the establishment of the gold board as the sole, more or less like off-taker of gold and export as a way of crowding in efforts. So from that perspective, I am with government that is done quite well. But in the face of the distraction, irresponsible mining, there is no way you can put this limited gain side by side the existential threat that is coming from irresponsible mining. In fact, we should not even dream about using these limited gains as an explanation for holding back, even for a day, in taking the action that will save generations.
Prof, let me ask you this. It sounds to me like what you're saying is we're not even maximizing the value of all this gold we have on the ground. So would you then recommend we completely stop mining it and save the environment, or we improve our mining of it so we can get better economic gains?
Okay, thank you very much. You know, Cudjoe, in the run-up to the 2024 election, I felt, I could be wrong, Ghanaians should forgive me, I felt that there was a broad consensus when it comes to how we should respond to this genocidal issue. Let me put it that way. I thought there was consensus. There was consensus in terms of a certain agency that must manifest in the form of a state of emergency. I felt there was some level of consensus across the political parties. I'm not too sure whether others got along because the discussing and the push was going to inure to their political advantage. I'm not too sure whether that was the perspective of some people, but I thought that there was consensus. I am also hearing now some kind of drifting in terms of position and all of that. Sometimes when I think to it, I get confused. And here, Ghanaians will forgive me. You should allow me to be confused at some point. But really, we've got to sit down and ask ourselves whether we are benefiting optimally from our natural resources that have expiring date. Remember, it will not be there forever. And whether there is no other way that we can do this mining in a manner that benefits Ghanaians broadly, even for generations yet unborn, so that the next generation will not feel sorry that we came ahead of them. That's the point. So for me, from where I sit, I still believe that a certain agency that must manifest in the form of state of emergency. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand all the technicalities. And I understand that now, people now want to bring out the technicalities of declaring state of emergency and all of that. I can forgive them. But I believe that what remains is the fact that we are heading dangerously. Look, I have sent a memo to certain international organizations, and the position we are pushing is that we are at the point where we must recognize the macro criticality of irresponsible mining in our macro framework modeling. There cannot be any sustainable modeling of Ghana's macroeconomic framework and exclude irresponsible mining and the devastation that lies ahead of us. I can relate easily to a proverb in the Bible where it says that the fathers have eaten sour grapes and the teeth of the children have been set on edge. This is where we are. So I don't know which other way I can express this. Look, can you imagine that African countries, are happy to show up at the UN and make propositions about how we should reform international organizations and all of that. But we are unable to demonstrate to the world how this can be done from within. We are unable. We are happy to deliver wonderful speeches at the UN and all of that. We come home and the people of Central Region are not sure where clean water is going to come from. This is failure. This is a disaster. In fact, we should be apologizing to the world. The same institutions we are asking for reforms, we are appealing to them, even in this current structure, to come and help us solve this existential threat. This is a contradiction.
Prof.
Let's make progress. Even though we are saying that there's uptake, gold exports. Recently, government told us that gold export has brought in billions of dollars. That is not spendable money. That is not spendable money. That is not impacting our revenue envelope significantly. That is not money for Ado Forcing, who is really forcing to spend on infrastructure and transform this economy. That's not spendable money. Look, when you do the analysis, the maximum profit you can get from exporting raw gold, like we have been doing, is between 1% and 5%. The maximum profit. In fact, check Bank of Ghana's books. When they bought into this gold for oil, they booked losses. But when you process your gold, you do responsible mining, and you want to take advantage of the entire value chain, the minimum profit that you derive is 10%. Minimum. So it can go as high as possible. Okay, so do you know people are laughing whilst we are weeping looking at our water body? Today people go to the river bodies and go and fetch Tom Brown, not water. You know, those who are smiling whilst Ghana faces existential threat is United Arab Emirates. Check the data. They are the ultimate beneficiaries of all that God, in His own wisdom, deposited in our account. It is God who determined the exact place in our dwelling and set the boundaries. Those who are benefiting from what God has given us are not Ghanaians. More than 80% of our gold export now is going to United Arab Emirates. They are the ones who have set up manufacturing companies, adding value to blood gold that is exported from Ghana. They launder it, they wash it, and resell it to the rest of the world for higher value.
Prof, I now
Why are we behaving like we have not gone to school?
All the talking has already been done. Is that it?
Well, yes, because I felt that we needed to. In fact, I was hoping that the meeting will have an agenda that says, well, listen, we are moving. We want to go and discuss timelines, who should be held responsible at one point or the other. I mean, some sort of a chain of actions. Anyway, I don't think anything necessarily will be lost if I go tomorrow, Friday, and indeed I put all of this across. And I suspect that most of my colleagues will also ask for the same thing as well. A particular timeline, maybe from the 3rd of October, the next 3rd or 4th November, we would have probably put together some sort of a KPI and ask ourselves by the next month, this Friday, what do we want to see? Maybe that will be the essence of this meeting, because I think we now have to have a joint sort of planning team, some sort of planning team together, and then just monitor the progress. I think that's what we want to do. That's what I suspect I may even be proposing. Others will be proposing as well, because we discuss every aspect of this work, and all we want to do now is to get on with it. That will be the most important reason why I attend the meeting.
Franklin, let me ask you this. I mean, imagine you're the president, right? Before you became a very clear view of what was needed to fight this horrible menace of Galamsey. Then you became president, and it became apparent that there may be other ways to do it. There may be better ways to do it, but it requires some time. Now, the CSOs with whom you were aligned before you became president, they are still of the view that the way forward is state of emergency. But you have another way. Would it be wrong for you to attempt to explain your perspective to the CSOs and try and get their buy-in?
All right. Okay. So that's a beautiful question, by the way. So maybe now that he's in office, he probably is seeing things clearer. So yes, on that score, I don't think we yield. There's a good reason why you want to meet, but he could have still done it. He doesn't need to call CSOs. He probably needs to tell the whole country, because the whole country is interested in this matter. In fact, we are not a conveyor belt to propagating government intentions in business. I mean, we criticize. My point is, because it's a topical issue, you probably don't need that meeting. But anyway, let's agree. You've just said you just played the devil's advocate, and it's a beautiful question, and so we want to hear. In fact, even if you ask me, I can say that the president has explained all of this already, but he did say that, look, he's not interested in a blanket state of emergency. He's rather interested in some phased activities that would help. And in fact, not long after, the minister, the portfolio minister, actually came to tell us that there are certain areas that are security zones, which for me meant that they want to declare pocketed state of emergencies, which again seems to be pragmatic and sensible. So on that score, I'll yield that it is most likely that this will be part of the conversation, but I'll go further to say whatever discussions we have to put in timelines, and maybe that will be the zenith of this meeting. Put in timelines and say, okay, look, by next month, by December, we want to see this, and if we don't see this, somebody must leave office. Somebody must explain. We don't want long explanations, and then we get on with it. Maybe it's a good way to actually go and meet. So beyond the meet and greet that I suggested, maybe to be meet, greet, and then assign ourselves some task.
Thank you, Franklin. Now let's bring up back Prof. Bopkin to the conversation. Prof, I largely agree with you that gold is not giving us much. I'm a traveler, so I've been to a lot of the gold mining. Their lives are not improving. Roads aren't getting any better. Hospitals are not getting any bigger and better. Schools are not getting any flashier and well-resourced. So it looks as though we are just taking the resource from the earth, exporting and getting very little. And whilst you spoke, we did a back-of-the-envelope calculation, and this year the Gold Board estimates to export about $16 billion worth of gold. We will get about $1.6 billion, $2 billion. If we lose this as a country, is it going to throw our national finances off in any way and hurt our economy in any way? If it's going to hurt our economy, for example, what other industries can plug the gap, can fill in the gap, and help us move on as a country? Because I also strongly feel that we need to stop small scale mining for a while, maybe for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, do land reclamation, reorganize the small scale mining space, set the businesses on a better trajectory to do sustainable mining. So if we decided to do that, how will our economy be, and what can we do to ensure that we don't suffer too much whilst we attempt to really right the wrongs and set Ghana on the right trajectory as a sustainable mining destination? Prof.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I agree with you largely. If you look at the contribution of mining to employment, decent employment, revenue generation, the contribution is coming more from the large-scale industrial miners. Even with that, studies have shown that even they don't do responsible mining all across all the KPIs. So we have the big ticket miners, yes, but the problem is coming more from the artisanal small scale mining. So I believe that, in fact, if you look at the data, it is the over-reliance on natural resources, gold, cocoa, which has made us more lazier. Let me put it that way. So we stop thinking. We are not innovative because we are relying so much on this, and because we are fixated on this, we are not even exploring all the other sectors of the economy. Look, Cudjoe, in 2023, the Apple,
Yeah.
brought in more than $2.3 billion. Apple. Alone. If you see them by the roadside and the rest of that, you put less value on them in terms of inflows. So it is nice. It is limited to think that without gold from artisanal small scale mining, this economy will collapse. It will not. It will not. In fact, if you look at the data across African countries where we have similar economic framework and monetary authority, I'm not talking about the francophone countries like Ivory Coast and the rest, where they don't have monetary authority because of the peg currency. But if you look at countries that operate a fiscal regime similar to ours, and then a managed flexible exchange rate like we do, they are not heavy gold exporters, but they've seen considerable stability or appreciation of their currency. Some of them are working hard to diversify their economy away from excessive dependence on natural resources. In fact, if you look at tourism and you look at the literature, tourism-led export growth and development, and we package our export sector or our tourism sector appropriately, and iron out the frictions. Some of them are low-hanging fruit. We could generate a lot of effect from there to anchor the stability of the currency without causing harm to the environment. What that would also do is that once there's a shift in focus, government is a big spender in the economy. Once government signals a direction that this is the way we want to go, you see how private sector investors would align. So, for instance, since government started talking about 24-hour economy, agriculture for economic transformation, and all of that, we have taken note of investors who are registering their intentions in terms of setting up a pace along this economic development instrument that government is propagating and all of that. The signal itself is very, very important. The other bit to also look at is that, in fact, if we declare a state of emergency, a moratorium, that we are not going to do this, we will be more innovative in looking at switching our economic model to more idea generation economy, right? that allows us to create sustainable wealth without causing much damage to the economy.
So
I don't see this sitting side by side, the idea that we can only maintain the stability of the currency and all of that. That black gold gives CD stability. We will not celebrate it. We will not celebrate it.
So,
We will
Prof,
discount it. So
Prof.
I think it can be done. It's about bold decision.
so you want us to
And then,
move from
because
these?
also we are not.
You want us to move from these natural resources. Let me give you some numbers. If you check the Observatory for Economic Complexity, I'll use 2023 numbers. In 2023, our total export was about $27 billion. Out of this, gold was 15 billion, crude petroleum was 5 billion. So if you put the two of them together, you're at 20 billion. If you add cocoa beans and cocoa paste, that's another 1.5 billion. So that's 21.5 billion. You add manganese ore, another 500 million. So $22 billion out of our $27 billion of exports in 2023 was from these natural resources. And you're saying we should move away from them and be a bit more innovative in creating value within the economy. But if you are going to move away, how soon do you think we can do that? And because look, this is almost all our exports anyway. So how soon do you think Ghana can pivot, move away from these and become a different economy that doesn't suffer from the impact of these extractives?
Thank you very much. The data you have referred to, if you look at the granular data, the breakdown, if you look at the percentage that is coming from small-scale artisanal mining, and you look at the portion that is coming from industrial mining, from the big companies, well regulated to some extent, you will see that the big companies or industrial miners are playing a key role. In fact, until recently with Gold Board, as I indicated earlier, the bulk of the gold production from artisanal small-scale mining or illegal mining have largely been smuggled out of this country and all of that. And when you talk about export earnings, remember that because we are not maximizing the value chain, this is not impacting our revenue envelope directly the way it should. And there is no way you can build a sustainable economy which is based on that export of raw materials like you have just clearly outlined. This was the economic structure the colonial masters came to implant here, so that it will make us exporters of raw materials and all of that. Because of this excessive reliance on food and the distractions, we've seen the impact when it comes to the cocoa sector and the rest of and the fact that we are not doing well in the area of non-traditional export and the rest of them. I think those are the things that we want to look at. The drive now is how gradually we move our growth model from it being environmentally destructive to a more growth model that causes less harm to the environment. Then, if we are even talking about phasing it and moratorium in the area of artisanal small-scale mining, I think it doesn't mean that we are going to stop gold export totally, because there are big ticket mining companies that to some extent are doing responsible mining. As I indicated earlier, studies have also shown that even some of those big mining companies are not doing responsible mining. I think we need to take the conversation there too and have a national monitoring mechanism that allows us to infer the KPIs very well and monitor. Because sometimes if people say, oh, they are going to those mining sites, they get there, they are camped in a certain hotel, fed very well, and then they write a report, what the outcome will be. So those are the things that I think we should be looking at. We will pay some price to shift from this current growth model to idea generation economy, innovation, value addition, and more value addition in terms of even our non-traditional exports and the rest of them. In fact, you will realize that in the medium to the long term, we will generate more economic wealth than what we are doing right now. And I think that is the approach. Singapore, Malaysia, and the rest of them, this is what they have done over the years. You just mentioned gold, palm oil. which doesn't cause distraction to the environment. In 2023, palm oil and its related products brought in more than $23 billion to the Malaysian economy in 2023. You can check the data. At independence, we were probably doing much better than some of these countries. Okay, and even when it comes to our non-traditional exports, are we adding value? What would it take to shift the focus in those areas? And that is where you can create decent jobs. So I think this is not something that we should put side by side and all of that. We will incur some losses. There will be some pain and all of that, but that is necessary for the future we all want and will be proud of. And I think this will not cause much harm. If you position your economy, there is excess capital outside. US, they are cutting interest rates. Emerging markets, frontier markets will become attractive in terms of FDIs and all of that. If you signal this is the direction we are going, you will see investors who bring in FX. Okay? And that will anchor the stability of our currency. If we are shifting our growth model from excessive reliance on natural resource depletion to more value addition, and we are looking at even the food value chain, we're creating a lot more revenue. What will happen? If and right now the data is becoming increasingly clear, and I think with the change in leadership, people are becoming a bit more bold in sharing their findings in terms of heavy metals and the rest of them. That is what I see quite recently. That is good, but what will happen if there is manifestation at increasing level in terms of the detection of mercury, heavy metals, and all of that, even in the export of non-commodities? What will become of us?
Right.
In fact, if you take the health sector alone and pharmaceutical sector, if we are able to resource them and iron out the frictions in the economy, we could make billions of dollars from that sector alone. The pharmaceutical sector, health sector, value chain. Look, talk about food.
Prof, I want to bring
it in Africa. We have fertile land. We should not be importing tomatoes from a desert country to a tropical country. This is laziness. It's because all attention is on gold export earnings and the rest of them. Look,
right.
You
Prof,
check the value.
I want to bring in Franklin at this point.
From
Prof, can you hear me? Yeah, forgive me. I want to bring in Franklin at this point, just in the interest of time. Franklin, let's go back to the state of emergency, which seems to, which almost every party seems to be in consensus as the way forward at this point, and has been the case since last year. But I'm asking, why are we so sure that it will work? We've never done it before. We've never done a targeted state of emergency across the country in different places at the same time with the aim of fighting Galamsey. Never done that before. Why are we so sure that this is the silver bullet? Do we have Franklin?
That I think that what we are asking for is faculty responsibility and effectiveness. I'm not sure it is the absence of men on the ground that is responsible for the fact that the Galamsey keeps going on, right? I mean, I think the last president put together a I think it was 100-man strong team that was more or less oscillating, moving from one place to the other, even though the whole thing became a joke. But at some point they go here, then the whole thing comes back again. It's not for the lack of trying or putting men on the ground. It is the fact that the standard of operating procedure, whatever we give it in terms of engagement, we've never really optimized that at all. I don't think even if you say that you are declaring pockets of forest areas, no-go areas, and security zones is enough. It's just not enough. You can still put men there, but it's not enough. What terms of engagement do the men have? Are they supposed to execute on site? Basically, they see anyone who has no business What should they do? Did they fire the person? All these standard procedures must be put in, and KPIs must be given, and those KPIs must be shared with you and I, so that we can hold those people together. I mean, look, this whole ministerial committee, the whole reason why the whole thing failed was because there were so many people running around pretending to be working. I think it was only the chairman who eventually got tagged out, whose report never saw the light of day, was the one who was actually doing some work. But there was nothing in terms of holding the committee or members to, holding them to account. And maybe this what should change now. Now that we are saying that we want to have targeted emergency situations or declare certain security zones, first of all, we all have to agree. We need to be told. You see, I saw the ministers come and do a PowerPoint presentation with maps and everything showing that these are the forested areas, these are the number of this is the size of the area, these are how do you call it? These are the nature topography of the places. So we probably need some specialized equipment or personnel to go in there and hold the place together for how long? For a month or two. We expect that after 1 month, we expect to see this amount of work done. We expect to see this progress. Maybe this is what should change. Otherwise, all that we'll be hearing is a blue water guard. I don't even know what they are. Blue water guard. The next time you hear some seafarers, I'm sure the next time you hear something called bullfoot. I don't even know. So I think we need, beyond all of this, we need timelines that we can hold people together. When President Mahama gave us a 120-day of whatever. You see how I was happy telling them that, oh, I've done this in my 120 days. I mean, yeah. We all did the analysis. We thought, okay, it's on course. We agreed with him. Nothing stops us and him and his government from chatting. We have a charter and say, look, Charlie, we've met now. We don't want to come here again. No. If you invite me, I won't come the next time. I want to be able to see that by November 3rd, we should agree that this is what we should see. November, this is what we should see. Maybe that's what is missing. Right. Otherwise, we've done it all before. You're right. What haven't we done? We got drones. The drones became, I don't know whether they became flies and plot loss. I don't even know where they are. We did all sorts of things. We are chaining, how do you call it, this heavy equipment we are buying, right? We're doing all of this stuff. But there's no proper KPIs and holding people's account timelines. And I think that's what you and myself, people in civil society, everybody, not even everybody, should know this timetable. So that when the person comes and is telling you that, give you an update on Galamsey, the police are all over the place. You're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, you're gonna do what? You're gonna do A, B, C, D, you did it or you didn't do it, then you get out of the place. Otherwise we get somebody else.
Franklin, thank you for your time. Thanks, Professor Bopkin, for joining us. You've really given us lots to think about, both of you. We appreciate it very much indeed.